Happy New Year and Happy International Education Day. I welcome everyone here this morning to this important webinar, the 2022 International Day of Education, which was actually celebrated on Monday, 24th of January globally. My name is Dr. Mrs. Ore Van, Research Specialist and COO for Nataf & David Consulting and the Program Director of Educare Magazine. A little introduction to Educare Magazine. Educare Magazine, a youth and education targeted publication, focuses on highlighting and elaborating the African education system, exploring discussions and insights for ensuring growth and development of the African education system and the African youth. This career magazine is packed with reports, interactive counseling, seminars, conferences, features, and articles of great interest. It's a magazine every student standing at the crossroad of life will look forward to. While serving as a light of hope for students caught in dilemma, Educare is akin to a compass in hands of parents who want to guide their children towards the right path. For students who are ambitious, career conscious, and on the lookout for information that can give a clear direction to their careers, Educare is the right choice. The essence of Educare is beyond imagination. The world is swarming with opportunities, yet the youth flounder. The reason is simple. They do not have access to information to help them realize their ambition. The result at times is tragic as they end up compromising. Oftentimes, career choices of children are altered by the demand and choice of parents because they have not been able to get over the mind child has to be a doctor or an architect fixation. So Educare Magazine is available to give a guide. Subscribe to our website and YouTube channel, Educare Magazine. Well, the theme this year is Changing Course, Transforming Education. Just a little introduction on International Day of Education. International Day of Education was actually celebrated, as I said earlier on Monday, 24th of January 2022. This is the 4th edition of the celebration under the theme Changing Course, Transforming Education. The United Nations General Assembly proclaimed the celebration of International Day of Education on January 24th, 2018, which was first celebrated on the 24th of January 2019. International Day of Education is observed every year on January 21st to celebrate the role of education for peace and development. According to UNESCO statement, this year's International Day of Education will be a platform to showcase the most important transformation that have to be nurtured to realize everyone's fundamental right to education and build a more sustainable, inclusive, and peaceful futures. This year's debate will be around how to strengthen education as a public endeavor and common good, how to steer the digital transformation, support teachers, safeguard the planet, and unlock the potential in every person to contribute to collective well-being and our shared home. At this point, I want to acknowledge our speakers, and I want to just say one or two things about them, then we can continue the conversation. The first speaker I'm going to call is Dr. Olufunke Oyetola. Dr. Olufunke Oyetola is here to represent the Commissioner of Education, Lagos State. The keynote message before we start the conversation properly. Dr. Oyetola Idowu Olufunke is a director and head in policy, planning, research, and statistics department in the Ministry of Education. Up until now, she was head of the private partnership department in the same ministry. The lady of many sides, as two of those sides are worthy of mention. There are her academic and administrative angles,
It's pertinent to stress that her academic angle serves as a profiling factor for her administrative roles. Little wonder she serves both the office of the Honorable Commissioner for Education and that of the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Education. Dr. Yetola is superb at multitasking. This attribute has made her achieve very enviable feats in her service delivery and career application. Welcome, Dr. Olufunke Oyetola.
Yes. Good morning, all. I'm standing in for the Honorable Commissioner, Ministry of Education, who could not be part of this meeting because of the exigencies of our office. So I will read our speech. I am delighted to present this keynote address in commemoration of the International Day of Education. Year 2022's theme, Changing Course, Transforming Education, is reflective of Educare magazine ethos, which is to prioritize education as a way of improving outcome of learners in Nigeria and indeed Africa. Education remains key towards the achievement of gender equality, equity, eliminate early marriage, bullying, fight against hate speech, xenophobia, and intolerance, among other societal vices. Therefore, the purpose of this year's theme is to strengthen and welcome the revival of education in Nigeria, particularly during this peak period of post-COVID-19. We all know that COVID-19 was not what we prepared for, and since it came out in 2019, we have been living with it, managing it one way or the other. In the light of the foregoing, it is instructive to stress that despite the devastating effect of COVID-19, it has one of its merits as the advent and systematic integration of technology, that is, e-learning and teaching into our educational system. This put pay to a change in the course of education, which is adjudged as transformative and participatory. At this juncture, it is pertinent to highlight some of the benefits of e-teaching and learning, which serves as pointer to one of the themes agenda of the Governor of Lagos State, Mr. Babajide Olushola Sanwo-Olu agenda, which is education and technology pillar. Some of the benefits are, though not limited to this, it promotes information communication among students, it encourages collaboration among learners, it facilitates growth potentials, it engenders critical thinking, it builds leadership skills in students, it improves students' attendance as classes can be taken from any location of choice, and it also promotes creativity in students. Undoubtedly, e-teaching and learning has its teaching challenges, such as technological issues, erratic power supply, inability to focus on screen always, teachers' training needs, and a host of others. Nevertheless, the aforementioned challenges could not serve as a clog in the wheel of progress in the bid of transforming education. Rather, conscious efforts should be made to provide solutions to the challenges so that the transformation which has begun can be sustained towards better outputs in the learners. At this point, I heartily congratulate Educare magazine for aligning with the vision of UNICEF on a common theme in commemoration of the International Day of Education. Let me end this address by reiterating that transforming the future requires an urgent rebalancing of educational processes with emphasis on technology that permeates our lives towards opportunities without leaving out serious concerns for equity, inclusion, and equal educational provisions. On this note, permit me to officially endorse this summit, as I assure you of my partnership with your organization so that the summit can end on the note of success. I wish you all robust deliberations. Thank you Folashade Adefisayo, Honorable Commissioner, Ministry of Education. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that keynote address. Now I'm going to quickly call on Chinedum Oluwadamilola. She's the President, Association of International School Educators of Nigeria. She's going to give us her talk on education for today and tomorrow. She's going to talk about education for today and tomorrow. And before I call her forth, I want to just say a few things about this great woman, Chinedum Oluwadamilola. Chinedum Oluwadamilola is the principal of Corona Secondary School, Agbara. She has almost 30 years experience in teaching, teacher supervision, administration. Her area of interest include teacher development, supervision, and evaluation with a view to improve student learning, classroom management, instructional and personal effectiveness. She's an author, facilitator, and a teacher trained Chinedum has also been on since 2007. And she was the first dean of School of Primary Education of the college. She now combines her duties as a school principal with her position as the deputy. Oluwadamilola has been a member of the board of trustees of Association of International School Educators of Nigeria, and today she's the president. Since 2010, she served as the vice president of SN BOT for many years and is currently the president of the board of trustees. Chinedum is a proud mother of 3 distinctively different and accomplished young adults. I love the word she chose for the children. She loves, owns, and enjoys an eclectic collection of books and music. She's IT savvy and simply loves and uses diverse modern technology tech. Please, I want us to welcome Chinedum Oluwadamilola to give us her talk on education today and tomorrow.
Good morning, everyone.
Okay.
I'm glad to be here. My name is Chinedum Oluwadamilola, and I'm here representing ASEN, Association of International School Educators of Nigeria, the president of the BOT, like Dr. Van had said. This is a topical issue that we're discussing, the education for today and for tomorrow. The theme for this year's International Day of Education is changing course, transforming education. So what exactly are we looking at? Our children have to go to school, education has to continue, but what kind of education are we giving? And so I have just about 10 minutes to share my thoughts. They are not thoughts that we haven't heard before, but I'm just going to have to talk about them yet again. By the way, I'm in almost a public place. I'm in the airport on another leg of a trip. So please bear with me if you hear any background noise. So I'll be speaking on education for today and tomorrow. And I have a definition. Education is defined by C.V. Good as the aggregate of all the processes by which a person develops abilities, attitudes, and other forms of behavior or practical values in the society in which we live. So the operative word there is forms of behavior, the abilities that are for practical values, the ones that would be useful in the society. And that's what education is about. So the education our forefathers got was an education that was useful for their society, be it in farming or fishing or hunting or being as craftsmen. So they were educated in abilities and things that were of practical value in those societies that they lived in. And so what is practicable? What is useful for our society today? Education in the Industrial Revolution era, whether it is in Industrial Revolution 1, 2, 3, or 4, was meant to meet a need. It wasn't useless. It wasn't a useless education. It was useful. It was meant to, give people the basic skills and knowledge, concepts, relevant concepts, the skills that they needed, to be what they could be. So we move on. So in those times, the teacher was the sole repository of information, because the information needed was, they placed a lot of premium on memorization, knowing of facts, a lot of that on a lot of information on compliance, on conformity. This is how we do things. 2 times 2 is 4. Not 2 oranges plus 2 oranges, or 2 apples and 2 mangoes. 2 times 2 is 4. You learn the tables and you know it. How many continents do we have? There was no place to find it except the teacher tells you and you take it up in a textbook. So it was an education that was useful for the work that they needed to do. So it was an education that was meant to meet a need. So the question is, today's education, is it meeting the need for today and for tomorrow? I like what the Honorable Commissioner said in her keynote address, that was ably read by Dr. Oyetola. And that is one of the good things that came out of the COVID pandemic, is the fact that we are looking at technology in a different way. So it's important that our schools align their curriculum to the demands of life that is complex, globalized, digital world. And so it's a kind of education that will invariably transform a society that is transforming. Our society is transforming from what it used to be to, a different thing. And it is on the continuum. It is not something that is static and say, okay, this is where we are now and we're here. So it is a transforming society. An article by the African Leadership Academy portrays these inadequacies of what we have now as not being sufficient for what we need for today and for tomorrow. And it says, and I quote, that the traditional education system and its roots in the industrial era is tailored to enabling students to acquire a standard set of tools and knowledge to solve repeated problems that were relatively static and that are requiring a low degree of creativity and thinking, much like the tools and templates that are required to build a relatively standardized shape. So it will be helpful for individuals at that time to be able to just read and write. So students of today should be viewed as producers and not just mere listeners. So our schools operating that way, where we're getting our students to be producers and not just those who are, learners all the time, or those that have been produced. So what should our schools do? Because, everybody understands relatively that this is an issue. So what is it that we need to do? We hear people bandy the words, 21st century skills, collaboration, problem solving, and so on. But beyond all that, our children need to acquire the skills and competencies that will help them to be problem solvers in a world that is uncertain and in a world that is rapidly globalizing. It's important that our students, our children, learn how to function in that world. And that means that they need to acquire, engage, develop, and demonstrate a much richer and time-relevant set of skills and attitudes. And so profound technological advancement is important, and it is something that no one should be left behind practically. So schools need to provide customized education, not a one-size-fits-all, and personalized learning experiences. Not every child should sit and learn only social studies or learn math and English, physics, chemistry, biology. Okay, you're going this way. You're going to become a doctor, so you do physics, chemistry, biology. Or you want to be a lawyer, you need to do a bit of history, a bit of literature, and so on. But there should be personalized learning experiences, and which is where the learner-centered approach comes in. So we must begin that journey from the content that was a hallmark of traditional paradigms of education. So we should provide learners avenues to increase their knowledge through exposure to global and contemporary issues. And some of those global and contemporary issues that our children, our learners, our school children, our students need to know in today's world include things like climate change, financial literacy, digital technologies, global business, minority rights, world peace, and on. They should also know how to acquire knowledge, adapt this knowledge, and transfer the knowledge they have acquired to unique situations. Everything keeps changing. So how do I get the information I need? How do I, make the change I need at any point in time? You're not going to fall back on your math skills only. You're not going to fall back on chemistry skills. So when I need an information about how to do something, how do I get it? How do I adapt what I have found to meet the need that I have? So information is readily available now. So it's actually a moot point to say, oh, learn the 36 states and capitals. It's available on the internet. It's available everywhere. So our schools can lay claim to be the sole possessors of knowledge. So what we need to teach is to teach our students research skills. How do you research? How do you even filter the fake from the genuine? The aim should be to get them ready to analyze information, find unique insights in the enormity of data available. And you can bet there's so much data. Look, when you check something on Google, just read the fine print that tells you how much, what you're looking for has been found in the so number of seconds. And sometimes it runs into millions. So how do they, in this enormous data available, so how do they use it in order to get what they want? How do we use it? So our schools need to invest in digital technologies and teach our teachers how to use these digital technologies. And it's not just enough to get things and put them in the class and expect everybody to know how to use them. How do you stand in front of an IFP and be able to connect to the classroom that is somewhere in India and share an experience with them? How do you do that? Do our teachers know that at their fingertips? And also how to teach the children these digital skills. And so COVID-19 has put that on the front burner. And so as I conclude, the transformation that we need in education for today and for tomorrow lies in the ability of not only the teachers to know how to utilize digital tools, but for our students to use this digital medium very, very conveniently and effectively, not just going on social media and doing TikTok, effectively for research issues, to create knowledge, to share ideas, to solve problems, to collaborate on projects. My students have had to collaborate on projects with, schools that were separated by, the vast ocean, schools in Asia doing the same projects. Currently, we have some running, doing projects and collaborating. Children should know how to do that and use technology as a tool to solve problems. And so it is said that the problem of today is not that schools are not what they are meant to be. Rather, it is that schools have remained what they were. And that is where the problem is. People would say, oh, schools have changed. They're not what they used to be. The problem is that schools are remaining in what they are and what they were, instead of evolving into, what will be useful. As Albert Einstein says, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And we hope that these conversations will help us to, come together, collaborate more, and help one another as we transform our schools to schools that will cater for, the children of today and the world of tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chinedu, for that insightful presentation. One of the things I picked is that schools must design their curriculum to the demand of the digital world, and not just learning and learning. They should also produce, and that led to the area of the skills and competencies they must possess for them to just not learners, but also to be producers. They have to also be problem solvers. They should be able to solve problems. It's not more the days where you just cram to pass your exams. This time around, you're expected to solve some of these problems from yourself, and not cramming and just quoting what you have crammed. These are the things she was trying to put across to us. I want to call on Mrs. Olufunsho Owasoye. Mrs. Olufunsho Owasoye, please. I want to call her up to speak on what she has. Mrs. Olufunsho, are you here, please?
Yes, please. I'm here.
Okay, so sorry. We are just sorry about this internet thing. This is the problem we're having, even during the pandemic, that student home and all that. And with all this profit of human development, one of the leading not-for-profit governmental organizations in Lagos. She's an educationist, psychosocial and child's rights, mentor of teens and youth, and a lover of family stability. She has 2 master's degree in education planning and administration and social. She's an education, diploma in social work for families and adolescents. She has diploma in social work and community care. Former member, Council of Colleges of Education, Nigeria. Former member, Governing Council, Oil and Gas Polytechnic, Bonny River State. Member, Visitation Panel, National Mathematical Center, Abuja. Member, Teaching, Training and Education, UK. Coordinator, HDI Education Trust Fund, providing educational scholarship to widows, children, orphans, and children with disability in public schools from nursery to federal tertiary institutions, educational and counseling consults of Wives Academy. Through HDI, she has implemented over 30 projects on transparency and accountability in basic education, monitoring of UBE fund, good governance, human trafficking, child labor, among others, strengthening 21st century child, and understanding hormonal imbalance in marriage and how to prevent it from destroying your home. I have the pleasure to welcome you, Mrs. Olufunsho Owasoye. Welcome to this conversation, and I hope we are going to. There's so many things you would have sometimes you just talk about what's just generally on the team and the team we have for today. So welcome.
Yes. Thank you very much. Yeah. Okay, let me quickly go. So I'm just going to speak on the changing course and transforming education. International Day of Education 2022 asks 2 germane questions. One, how do you strengthen education as a public endeavor and common good? Two, how do we steer the digital transformation, support teachers, safeguard the planet, and unlock the potential in every person to contribute to collective well-being of our shared society? Obviously, the answer to these questions are not as simple as they sound, for the reason that are strained with political will, the state of national economy, history of education system, management and administration, poverty of both man and mind. Good education is very important for every citizen and is the totality of our experience right from cradle to the grave. And we all know this education is the bedrock and development of any society. It's just like you are breathing in here, and without it, one cannot go far. In 2018, 7.2 million children in Nigeria were attending early education program. In the whole country, we have like 81.3 thousand public schools for pre-primary education, whereas classroom required were 146.5 thousand, which means there was a lack of 65.2 thousand classrooms. This was by a research with Simona Varela last year. Now, the country has over 13 million out of school, which is the highest. Another 27 million children in school are performing poorly. Millions of Nigeria have educated, 30% illiterate. Recent data that shows gross enrollment in primary school stood at 68.3. And data also on number of classrooms showed that there was a deficit of 230,000 classrooms. So this data indicates that at average in Nigeria, 51 people on average. But unsurprisingly, this gap, of course, have opened the floodgates for private institutions. And overall completion rate for upper secondary school in Nigeria, female higher than males. Now, let's look at also there is erosion of basic education as a public school. For example, existing data shows that we have 1,010 primary school in Lagos, I'm using Lagos, with about 497,318 pupils, 670 junior, 564 above students, and 5 technical and vocational schools. I'm just giving us this background for you to know, you and I, to know that yes, we need a change. And great changes are occurring in the global world. And education system must respond to these changes. Otherwise, it becomes obsolete and irrelevant. And one thing is to desire change. Another thing is to be intentional and make sure that, yes, process structures are in place to bring about this change. There is evidence in Nigeria, which over the year has shown that government investment in education has not achieved the desired result, goals and objectives. And the failure of education sector had increased incidence of poverty and deprivation of vulnerable groups. Now, to the theme, changing the course of current education system and practice is long overdue. Even if we pretend that it is not so bad, the realities of our children who consume education Nigeria offers completely favorable well with their counterparts in other climes in terms of attaining their dreams, jobs, opportunities. These are constant reminders that educational ship has headed south. and our children are jumping the ship. They have been asking questions for the type of education we offer. We must all now begin to work together more than ever to make education accessible, available, and relevant. In doing this, we need to consider the following. But before I go into the following, that is recommendations for us to revive education and transform it. In 1995, Wole Soyinka said, there is need for emergency in education. How do we come to be the largest country without our school children? How did we get there? How did we get to where most of our children are on the streets? How did we get to cultism in schools, exam malpractices, even teachers cheating, parents bribing because of children to excel, indiscipline, and other vices? They've come to stay in educational institutions, increasing student population, inadequate teachers, low teachers' motivation, inadequate conducive environment, low teachers' commitment to technology. Imagine in one of the teachers that was trained, well, over 50, but that doesn't matter. It's like, oh, this computer, this technology, our eyes will be paining us. So how do you want us to cope? Imagine that. So way forward, one, funding, and prudent expenditure. Government is not doing enough to funding. UNESCO had directed 26% fund to be set aside. But what have we done? During Western region, 22%. During when military came, nothing reduced to nothing. In 1999, the budget was just 12%, and now 6%. So funding, biggest problem confronting our system. So government needs to cut down wasteful expenditure. Allow me at this junction to give kudos to Lagos State, specifically to our governor, Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu, and the Commissioner of Education that made the budget of education this year top priority after economic affairs. The country's educational goal should be clearly stated out in terms of relevance to needs of individuals and those in society. There must be radical change, especially in terms of curriculum content, methodology, instructional materials. We need to realign existing education policies with what can be done with incessant strides in our higher institutions. Introduction to technology. Also, kudos to Lagos State, the EcoExcel program, and recently, introduction of comprehensive school program, which comprises of subjects in building, construction, digital skills, media, entertainment. All this will address student dropouts. Also, another recommendation, investment in teachers. The first speaker said that research skills, because it's not what they've been used to, then they need to be encouraged, motivated, because that's the way forward. Also, creation of a system which is free from all form of unfair discrimination and artificial barrier to access and success. Elimination of corruption in utilization of education funds. Continuous professional development for teachers. Strategic management for efficiency and effectiveness in school system. All education stakeholders, not government alone. We should start thinking outside the box. Teachers' welfare needs to be scaled up. Students' discipline, registration, and strict one, and approval of private schools. These policies, there must be implementation. Also, conducive environment, not in terms of building infrastructures, also, and I'm particular about this one, also positive behavior and attitude of educators and school management that can boost the morale and increase emotional intelligence of a student, not emotionally stable, that teaching and learning can effectively take place. Governments must encourage keeping of data. We don't have accurate data. And this will help in proper planning. Also, reorientation of values. Transforming education actually must start from the home. You and I, as parents, we should stop relegating our responsibility to technology. Technology cannot teach our children morals. Even if they read about it, it's different from physical contact. Also, for this revival in education, we need more emphasis on vocational education. There must be adequate proactive planning. Government must have standard plan to achieve this transformed education we hope to see. We begin a phased implementation of plan to resource schools like for quality online education, including internet connectivity tools. Our teachers need to be, to learn, unlearn, and relearn. Government needs to channel more resources towards revival of this sector, with particular reference to role of education tax fund. We need to marry core subjects, like when we are revamping the curriculum, with entrepreneurship and life skill. We need to review our curriculum to adapt to emerging trends for the sustainable goals, that is the digital world. All stakeholders must have the avenue to actively participate in school governance to be able to achieve effective delivery, improve service, equity, and learning outcomes for learners. We need to promote community interest in the school system, advocate for political will. That's you and I. We need to advocate for political will to address the gap in inequalities in access and completion of education in line with SDG. Students have complained in the past that their voices are not relevant. So we need to listen to them on what changes and innovation they too want to see to make education more fit for purpose. The same with teachers on future of their profession. We listen to them from integrating technology in their practice. In higher institutions, what are we doing with endowments? We need to set up endowments. They are the main source of funding. We promote and support schools to achieve set targets, benchmarks to yield better learning income. Allow me to end this with the Director General of UNESCO, what he said, Andre Arcelé. He said, in these exceptional times, business is as usual. It's no longer an option. We are to transform the future. If we are to change the course, we must rethink education. And what does that mean? This means forging a new social contract for education. We need to repair past injustices and orientate digital transformation around inclusion and equity. And we need education to fully contribute to sustainable development. For instance, by integrating environmental education in all curricula and training teachers in this field. From the Secretary General, he said, let's have a vision of education that ensures justice, human rights, and opportunities. And this will allow us to better respond to emerging challenges and address the interests of future generations. For me, here in Nigeria, I'm looking forward to a Nigerian education system where our children will no longer be addressed as Nigerian students, but addressed as global students, where Nigerian certificates can be honored, acknowledged over the world without any questioning. Enough of talking. Let's all walk the talk. All hands must be on deck. Let's remember, government cannot do it alone. Education is the responsibility of all, you and I. The question I'm leaving us with is, how can you and I drive the change we are expecting, we want to see from our own little corner, space, or environment? What can you and I advocate? What are existing systems, structures, policies that can be strengthened? We must be self-led, not waiting for somebody to lead before you follow. And I said, I pray by God's grace that the revival that we are yearning for, open for, desiring, will come very soon by God's grace. Thank you.
Amen. So we put amen to that. Thank you so much, Mrs. Olufunsho Owasoye. She's actually the president of Women Development Initiatives, and she's so vast in education. I was just listening with all the interest. I wish she shared the slides. It's so she actually delved into.
You.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Delve into that. But one of the things she said that actually caught my attention is that she was asking, how do we strengthen education? Because everybody is shouting, how do we transformation? How do we as individuals? It's not enough for us to just, ask and make noise about it, but we also have to be self-made to be able to transform what we desire to be transformed in education. And she went ahead to talk about the political will, a national economy being contributory to the educational system in Nigeria and all that. And she also looked at a lot of things. Poverty could also be a hindrance to transformation, in education and all that. She talked about us knowing actually the history. If you actually want to transform education, we need to know the history of education in Nigeria. We need to know how it started, where it started, where we are now, and probably if we know where we are, how we started, and where we are now, we should be able, then it will help us to know what to do to move forward and to transform it to be at the level where she's referring Nigerian students as global students. I like that, to be global student, that is in standards, in educational standards. She talked about so many things that I may not really put up here, and she talked about government funding. Government should actually fund. I think in Nigeria education is underfunded. It's underfunded. So government should raise up. Thank God, like she said, Lagos State is doing so much. The commissioner is doing so much. The Ministry of Education is doing so much, to help in these institutions that we have in Lagos State. I wish other states will take lead from Lagos State, and the government itself should come up with sufficient funds for education. And the corruption in utilizing these funds is very important. These funds are there, some of these funds are there, but so much corruption in this nation does not allow the funds to be used for what they ought to be used for. So we have to be very careful, especially as stakeholders, those in government, even we ourselves. The school owners should also be able to fund the schools adequately. You go to some areas, look at some schools, you just be wondering, why will any mother want to send her child to such a school? Because there are no infrastructures, nothing, no facilities and all that. People just open up schools these days for businesses and not for what's supposed to be. So we have to look into that also, especially the government. We said the other time that the monitoring team should be able to stand on their feet and make sure that the standards we have in schools have to be same in all the schools. Thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for this presentation this afternoon. And I want to thank you also for advising us to work collectively left to schools and teachers. Parents should be very, very much involved in the education of the children. Parents, thank you so much. We're glad to have you. I hope you are not leaving, because I'm sure some people have some questions. And of course, if you have questions, please, you can type the questions on the chat box. We'll pick it up from there, or you raise your hand up, then we call you for your questions. Thank you so much. She has done so well. I appreciate it for that, madam. God bless you. And she also made a prayer at the end of the day. She prayed that God will help us to achieve this. And we say amen to that. Thank you so much. Then I want to ask a question, if nobody has a question. Is it possible to transform education without transforming our lives? Is it possible to transform education without actually transforming our lives?
The answer is capital no. I said
okay, capital no. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
And I want to add more to it, that education is lifelong. It starts from birth and does not end until we are buried. That is when we get to the grave. So for any transformation to happen in education, it has to start from us. We have to be transformed ourselves, because education is lifelong. We learn from the beginning, since from our birth and to when we die. So as we learn, we change things along the way.
Okay, so it's not possible for us to transform education without us being transformed as people.
Yes.
Now, how do we see? Where do we see this transformation? Let's look at it in the Nigerian context. Here we have a lot of issues, in this banditry, kidnapping, and all that, and children out of school. There are some states that children are actually, the schools are shut down. The schools are shut down. Children are not going to school, and there are no infrastructures there are no facilities to teach these students at home. So I don't know how possible this transformation is that we are clamoring for. If there are no students to actually, there are no facilities. Okay, so far so good. I want to call on Mr. Magaji. He's done so much. Mr. Magaji has done so much. If I begin to read all that he's done, in fact, it will take the whole time. So I'm not going to really do that. I'm just going to pick some specific ones and mention. He's so vast in this sector, and he has been very, very instrumental to a lot of changes in different institutions. Or he's still a member, Governing Council, African University of Creative Arts. He's member, Governing Council, Veritas University, Abuja. He's a consultant and advisor, Planet Investment and Properties. He's the National Project Coordinator, National Youth Development Fund, Officer of the Minister. Is the country co-facilitator, World Bank e-learning program on skill. He's on the advisory board. He's an advisory board member, Brookhouse Schools, Kenya.
Let me thank Educare and the organizers of this Zoom meeting. I was to take the presentation a bit earlier, but I was later advised to join the queue, ladies first. So all the ladies have to present before we the men. So that's why I'm on this position, which is fine. So I thank you. And I'll just be talking briefly about, redesigning quality and access in education post-COVID. So all of us now, 2 years into COVID and the epidemic, and sometimes I also call it a disruption because it actually created a whole new world. Educationists and stakeholders in education in that sector are looking at new ways of redefining access and quality of education, given the experiences, which were largely unprecedented. And even if there were epidemics before now, in the early part of the 20th century, the context is clearly very different. So a lot of educationalists all around the world have been looking at, what do we need to do in trying to redesign access to education? How do we continue to guarantee quality? Because we just woke up and after a few days of the epidemic, schools were closed, offices were closed, learning centers were closed, and a whole new world began that people were very uncertain about, something that had never happened before now. In the public sector, the issue was, okay, fine. The public sector is typically the largest player in most countries, for delivering education service delivery. And how do we manage this disruption? How do we sustain the academic calendar at all tiers of education, by the way, whether it is tertiary, basic, or even secondary, rushing towards different solutions. At the end of all this, what is very clear is that the world will not be the same. And the COVID incidents provided an opportunity for us to press the reset button for education sector. To think of it differently, what really is education? What really is learning? How do we learn? What is the new way of learning? What is the new way of teaching? And I dare say, even without COVID, these are questions that we should continuously ask ourselves. Are the traditional methods of pedagogy still relevant in the way we deliver education, the way we educate our people? What about education itself? Is it just about academic skills, re-expressing ideas, or does it involve the holistic formation of a human being? So it's not just academic excellence or measuring an intelligence quotient. Maybe there are other elements like the emotional intelligence quotient. Maybe there are other elements around interpersonal skills. Maybe there are other elements around understanding your role in life as a child and what you will be. So it raised all these questions, and people have been trying to answer them. Some have argued that we cannot admit anything new into the curriculum because our curriculum is actually very loaded. But how much of the load is really relevant to the marketplace? How much of the load in that curriculum is relevant also to life skills that children need to form a holistic being that they should be, beyond just being the first in class or the smartest in a particular subject? How does this also connect to the job market? How does it connect to real life, where you have smart kids out there, but they cannot just relate, they can't function in teams. They are not empathetic towards the life around them. They don't understand what it means to be part of community. People have said, and I'm sure many of you remember the old reliable saying, which says it takes a village to educate a child. Now, what has happened to that concept? Essentially, it was saying beyond the one classroom, one teacher, a new format, or adapting a new format where it's just not, and even that one teacher, even if he's charged with that responsibility, in today's world, is he adequately equipped with the pedagogy, with the content, with the experience to make that child whole in terms of holistic learning and enjoying a very unique learning experience? Because a lot of focus is being made in the area of learning, but not much is being said about teaching and teachers and building their capacity. What do we have to do to the colleges of formation for education, for example, or those who are in the educational sciences, when we're training teachers today? What should be the areas they should focus on beyond just the academics? Because we've all come to see, even today in the job market, yes, it's okay to make a first class or a 2-1 in any subject. It's okay to have gone into the university. But guess what? At that first level, that might be a requirement. At another level, people are now asking, what skills do you have? as a student, as a graduate, as somebody who is aspiring to work, to actually qualify for the job you're asking for, to qualify for the business you want to do. Because we've come to see that there's a limitation that certification provides. Yes, it's one thing to be certified, to be proficient in a particular subject or discipline, but it's another thing to have skills, life skills, that can enable you to do that job effectively. So these are the questions that are increasingly going to we have to address going forward in redesigning how people are taught. COVID also brought out the fact that schooling is no longer about brick and mortar. It's no more about a particular geographical space. Schooling and learning can be done anywhere using different types of tools. And very recently, there's a new concept that's coming up around what you call learning teams. People are saying in training and forming children, students, pupils, can we engage other stakeholders to be part of the teaching and indeed the learning process beyond just the teacher himself or herself? And people are looking at things like volunteers within the community where schools are based. Volunteers who can come share their experience, life skills to children, to also give them another dimension to complement what they learn in those subjects. Another thing that is gaining currency today is the role of even alumni of schools, associations, and the role they're playing. I have been privileged to serve in the alumni of my secondary school, the Federal Government College Jos. I've also been privileged to serve and currently serve as Vice President General of Unity School. Also, there's 110 federal government colleges, federal government girls colleges, federal science colleges. And what are we doing as alumni? Beyond welfare for ourselves, the priority really is to go back to our schools, give back, and bring them back up to the quality and probably even beyond what we experience. So the alumni associations are growing today. Many of these alumni are people who are schools 30, 40, 50, up to 60 years ago and want to give back. We've had alumni associations coming to school programs, coming to mentorship programs at school to also bring some more inspiration. I never had it when I was in primary or secondary school, but today, the students of today have that privilege of talking to alumni, having them attend the school assembly, talking to them once a year at the speech and prize giving day. This is all part of the learning process. This is all part of the redesign in terms of the input and the content that children can get today because of the alumni. What about other people in, and not only that, the alumni have been responsible in supporting a lot of those kids through school by way of prize giving, by way of mentorship and incentives, by way of even scholarships. And this happens a lot, especially in Yososa, where a lot of alumni have come back to their schools to support indigent students, to support high-performing students. Again, this is part of the learning process. This is part of the inspirational process. So education in itself is not just to certify proficiency in a particular subject, but to make you a whole being and to give you a wider perspective of what society entails. So this is possibly part of what the redesign could look like. Again, community participation in those localities where schools are based. How much do people really understand? How do we engage our students, for example, in doing community work outside their school, supporting indigent communities, supporting poverty-stricken communities? I happen to serve also today as an advisory board of Brookhouse Schools in Nairobi, Kenya. And one of the things we do, Brookhouse Schools is an international school which is part of the G30 schools globally, some of the top secondary schools around the world. And Kenya has Brookhouse as one of them. I'm not sure Nigeria has any school in that list. But what we also try to do in Brookhouse is, in as much as it's a private school, it's for largely privileged people, but the students are trained to be servant leaders. They're also trained as part of their educational experience to go to local and poor communities to do community work. So they get dirty in the mud, they build classrooms for local communities, they go to those schools to inspire even the poorer people, and sometimes those scholarships are given. That is part of their educational experience, which is to say you may be privileged to go to this kind of school, but hey, tomorrow if you do become a leader, you always know that there's the other side of it. We also have a scheme which we call the United Nations model. where in Nairobi we go to the United Nations offices and engage them in global debates on climate change, on health, on euthanasia, all sorts of topical issues, because this is also part of the holistic formation of a child. It is not just saying you're good in English, maths, and physics. There is also the holistic element we need to take care of. So in Brookhouse, we try to do those kind of things. And I think it's also part of this whole redesign, and to say, well, we are not going to limit the educational experience just to the classroom. There's more than your teacher. There's more than what you read as content. There's more than audio visuals. You need a practical experience, in the field to do some of these things. So these are the things we need to look at. And in adjusting our focus in redesigning the sector, we must look at the content also of our curriculum. How much of it is really still relevant? How much time are we spending on it? How much more time do we need to spend on other things, basically, so that we more holistic formation. Many years ago in school, go and read from sources other than what they had from the teacher. So you had to go to the library. Okay, this is an alternative form of learning. It's a blended learning, quite all right, but I'm saying we can extend this. And COVID has made this possible because people cannot go to school. So people had to develop libraries in their homes. People had to look for other resources. People had to get, volunteers around them. The parents were turned to teachers overnight through homeschooling, and parents had to learn new skills. And this is probably the reality, because as we move along, with or without the epidemic, we have to start thinking of different learning points for our children. It is not just the school. And I'm sorry, I know we have proprietors of schools here, but I'm saying we also have to adjust our minds to those type of things. And that is where I said the learning teams concept is coming in. Stakeholders to come and be part of the teaching process of the child, not just the teacher himself. And for those of you who are familiar with health systems, education, because when you look at the manpower requirement for health systems, beyond the physician, beyond the doctor, there are many other functionaries who play their role in the value chain itself. So it's not, you may not always have to see the doctor. Sometimes it's good enough to see somebody who may not be a doctor, and I think for education, we need to start looking at those kind of things. So you have a teacher, nothing stops us from having auxiliary teachers, nothing stops us from certifying knowledge workers, okay, who have a certain kind of skill that will be important, for the students to learn and imbibe new skills. So we disaggregate, if you like, the functions of that one teacher. Because many teachers are overworked, underpaid, and so much demanded of them. Pedagogical experience. Now, if you have other layers of people and actors in the system who are actually involved in education, who are also involved in the teaching and learning process of children, it takes that burden of the teacher and then distributes it across different areas that will be ultimately beneficial to the students. So these are things we can look at in more detail and in more depth. But clearly, the world is not going to be the same after this, and we're going to continue with these issues. Now, I'll finalize this presentation with emphasis again on even the role of the teacher, because increasingly teachers are going to be facilitators. The activity will largely be around student activity, student learning, and their interface with other learning sources. We also have to redefine what really a school is going to be, or what it should be. Why can't we have learning centers? Why can't we have specific, for example, laboratory learning centers where people can actually go to a laboratory center, develop themselves in the sciences, as opposed to every school wanting to own a lab, every school wanting to own a sports facility. These things can be outsourced, but be put part of the curriculum where people can specialize, and those who have those skills, whether it's in sports or in sciences or in laboratory work, can actually take students on. People can hire their football fields, their swimming pools, where people can actually, students can come and learn certain skills and develop them. So the whole idea around the brick and mortar school, the whole idea between having the school having everything and anything, becomes, if you like, diluted, not to reduce the content of learning, but to allow for even greater specialization, for even greater input for people who can actually do this. There's the emergence of a global curriculum delivery, and this is made up of different professionals, practitioners, policyholders, and Nigeria has to key into that argument, has to key into that discussion. School owners, global level, at the African level, engage these groups so that as this is being redefined, Nigeria is also carried along. Education is a very dynamic industry, and we must keep to terms with where the world really is. It's also a leveler, and I would finally like to say, if we don't redesign our service delivery, we don't redesign the quality of what we're giving, we don't redesign the access, we're going to have a lot of issues. I know that many of you will say, well, you know what, Mike, people can't even read or write and are not basics, and we must go beyond those basics. And even while attacking those basics, we should also aspire to set standards, so that we can also be considered as a knowledge economy, and an economy that wants to take education seriously. Industry, and I'll tell you who you are, even as a nation. So if we're failing at some point, it's likely because our education is weak or it's failing. So no amount of resources will replace it. We must put in place a dynamic education sector, and it can only be dynamic and versatile if we keep in touch and we practice those best standards. We learn and be part of this global coalition that's trying to make a change in the industry. So I do believe policymakers have to sit down with practitioners, stakeholders like parents also have to start redefining their roles and their interface with schools. The SBMCs, the school-based management committees, also have to start looking at what new roles they can play in this new dispensation. The parent-teachers associations also have to get serious. Instead of quarreling over levies, and I've seen PTAs go to court over all sorts of funny things, they should now look at the content quality of the education their children are getting. And I'm sure I don't want to mention names here, but of course, events of the recent past where bullying and issues like that have occurred, even with fatalities, that's a no-no. So I think in redesigning the quality also of our education, we need to look at those elements and sincerely tell ourselves the truth, whether as a proprietor, as a parent, that this is what we need to do if we really want to make progress. So once again, let me thank the organizers, Dr. Felix and her team, Educare, for such a great outing, and I look forward to future engagements, and I'll be happy to take your questions and comments after this. I thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much, Mr. Michael Magaji, for your time. I know I pulled you out from a meeting to join this conversation, but all the same, thank you for coming. Thank you for the contributions. And there was of all the things you said, yes, sure, most of these things we have talked about and all that, but of all the things you said, there's one of the suggestions you made that, for me, I think that would be a very great idea of having learning centers being specific. Now, learning centers being specific, if it is a science learning center, it's just specifically for science, not everybody doing the whole thing at the same time and all that. Now, if it's science, let it just be science, specifically learning center for science. If it's for arts, let it just be specifically for a particular subject and all that. If we have these learning centers all over the place, I think it's going to make a very huge change. I just want to remember in those days in school, where when we were in school, where a teacher was accountable for the students. I mean, it was in my days, it's like if a student is dropping in one area, either learning skill or whatever, even attitude and behavioral aspects, the teacher picks it up and reports it. Now, because of overcrowding in classrooms, these things cannot be, these things are no more happening. And then we have these issues and all that. And where I'm coming from is this area of learning centers being specific. Now, if in a class of 50, 10 people are science students, and they're all modeled up with the other 40 people, it becomes very, very difficult for the teacher to help those students that are science students to identify their abilities and their skills and parts. In our days, teachers were able to help us to identify our skills, our passion, identify our career path. You know, they were able to identify whether you're going to study medicine or you're going to study law and all that. Now, if we have specific learning centers, it will be very helpful for students now as it is, because for me, the population in schools now is alarming, and it doesn't give room for all these things. It doesn't give room for identification of specific skills and competencies of students. So, and then, like he also said, please, PTAs, the PTA should be more concerned in the learning outcomes of our children, and not concerned in fees and all that and fighting here and there. Very unfortunate. You go to some schools, you see parents fighting, PTA meeting, they are fighting. I've been a witness in one of the schools. Parents were carrying chairs, like what we used to see probably in those days in the House of Assembly. They were carrying chairs to hit another parent, and it was so, I was so irritated, and I could not even believe that these are parents. And then I was wondering, what do you expect of the student, of the children of these parents? And it goes back to the fact that parents should be,
that's right,
very first foundation for these children. You know, because what you hear now is every parent is saying, the school is this, the school is that, the school is that. Meanwhile, they are not even contributing to the upbringing of these students and all that. And it is a very big mistake and very big negligence we have in the society. The parents, the school, the teacher, the school management, the government, they are all stakeholders in this regard. Thank you so much, Mr. Magaji, for this presentation. And thank you for always coming. He's always coming to join us. And he's just the only one man among all the women. We have blessed among women, 3 women. He's always blessed among men, among women. Thank you so much, Mr. Magaji. Thank you, Doctor. I need people, if you have a question, please ask. If you have contributions, please contribute, so that we also rub minds in some of these areas that are affecting the transformation of education in Nigeria, because it's a very big concern. It's a very, very big concern. Our future is at stake. Our children, their future is at stake. This generation's future is at stake. Until there's a transformation, there's a change, there's a reorientation of this sector, we will at some point, we'll almost lose everything. So if you have questions, you have contributions, you can just raise your hand up, you can type it on the chat box, we pick it from there. Before I ask our speakers to come back and just give us a minute roundup of their topics or their discussions they had. Any questions, any contributions? Okay, there's none. I want to call Dr. Olufunke Oyetola, please. If you have contribution or just round up from the presentation, the delivery notes you did at the beginning of the discussion. Dr. Oyetola, please.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Van. I've thoroughly enjoyed being part of this.
Thank you.
So the delayed flight is a blessing in disguise. Okay, so my advice would be that there's no one size fits all to solve the problem or the needs that we have as a people, as a nation in the area of education. And so we should be open-minded, get all the information we need, and do all we can within our circles and spheres of influence. It is not the job of any one person, neither is it the job of the government. So in the schools where we work, in our spheres of influence and all that. Let's do the best we can. It's a digital world we are in. It's a transforming world. Let's spearhead it in every way possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. God bless you. Thank you for coming. She's saying that it's a collective job. It's not just a personal job. It's for everybody. We should also be open-minded, and get all the information we need for this transformation to take place. And it should be collective. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for your contributions and your presentation. I don't know if Dr. Yesola is back. I don't know if Dr. Yesola is back. Okay. Mrs. Olufunsho Owasoye.
Yes, please.
Okay, ma'am.
Well,
okay. Yeah, thank you.
I want to say thank you once again for the opportunity. But for me, I want to add my voice to Mrs. Chinedu, sorry, yes, Chinedu
Damilola. Yeah,
yes.
Chinedu Damilola.
Yes, we need to be passionate. This is a cause, and every one of us needs to be passionate. And like I said, it's the responsibility of all, and to make sure that we do everything in our own capacity or through influencers, that we make sure that the real change we want to see in education, we'll be able to achieve it. Our conversation must not stop here. We just have to scale it up to others that need to hear about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We need to be very passionate about this. We need to I just want to apologize for the technical issues we had that didn't give us a smooth ride in this conversation. It used to be a very interactive conversation, but with all these hitches up here and there, it wasn't too smooth. Thank you so much. I want to also say that we will still not knock at your doors again in March when we are celebrating women in education. So don't be surprised to hear us knock, or to see us, or to hear our voices when the time comes. And it's going to be physical this time around. We are not going to do virtual. It's going to be physical in March. So I hope that we'll be able to attend. The information will get across to every one of us here. And if you want to have this conversation sent to you after we finish, please just type in your email address on the chat box. We'll pick it there so that we'll send this program to you at the end of the day when we finish this conversation. And I want to also ask if Dr. Olufunke Oyetola is still around. I don't know if she's still around. If she's not around, so I will just use this opportunity once again to thank everybody. I don't know if Mr. Magaji, do you still have anything to say?
I just think that as the sector evolves, and to continue to evolve, we must stay on top of the game and ensure that all our stakeholders, our parents, our teachers, our policymakers, work together rather than compete for space and territory. Work together to see what will work out best for our kids as pupils. Thank God there's technology today that can do a lot. It may not be affordable now, but eventually, and COVID has shown it, increasingly people have gotten more interested in using their mobile phones for not just watching movies and chatting, but for learning. So that disruption also has led to new habits in terms of use of technology, and we should continue to encourage these kind of things. Let policymakers, let governments also subsidize education through technology for the person on the street, the man on the street. And through that, we'll continue to redesign and refocus on new frontiers in the sector itself. That's my final submission.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Every stakeholder should put hand on deck to make all this work. And then One last thing he said that there is that government should subsidize education through technology, so that an average student, average person, child should be able to access education through technology. Thank you once again for this beautiful outing. And I say, God bless you for coming, for attending. And next time we'll hold this conversation. It's a continuous thing. We'll continue to hold this conversation, lend our voices until we get our desired goal in this area. Thank you so much. You do have a good weekend, and God bless.